Good afternoon. Today I'm going to be reviewing the Rdunae RA01T military field watch. This watch is available from Rdunae.com for $40 which is €39. So firstly, let's look at the box that the watch comes in, and then I'll talk you through the specifications of the piece. So the watch comes in a metal tin which is housed inside this black cardboard box. I'll remove it and show it to you. So this is the tin that the watch comes in. And inside we have a foam protective panel you remove, and the watch sits in the base inside a foam cutout, and there's also a profile piece of foam which the watch fits around, so a good snug fit inside the tin. It does a good job of protecting the watch in shipping from any damage. Rdunae deserve credit here because they could have taken the less expensive default option of using a cardboard watch box. Bearing in mind this is a low tier price point piece at only €39. This metal tin does give it a vintage military issued aesthetic, and it is very aesthetically pleasing. I like it. So with regards to the items that come with the piece, this is the owner's instruction manual, clear concise diagrams. The instructions are in English and it's also translated into a plethora of foreign languages. Clear concise diagrams, and it details the operation of the movement use, which is the Miyota caliber 2035 quartz. One also gets this spring bar tool which has two rubber caps you remove, two-prong fork at one end and also a push pin at the other end. The body is made from plastic and the two tips are made from steel, so it's good quality and it does suffice in removing the spring bars if you want to exchange the single pass fabric strap and fit an alternative. And lastly, one also gets this Rdunae tag, so it has Rdunae in English and also Mandarin, and on the other side it has the Rdunae emblem and text logo. Now, there is no plastic warranty card. However, I'm pleased to report this Rdunae RA01T military field watch is covered by a 3-year international warranty, which is very impressive. Often low-tier Chinese brands only cover their watches by a 12-month warranty, but this has an exceptional 3-year international warranty, and Rdunae deserve full credit for that. So this RA01T military field watch is clearly an homage to the CWC G10, which was a military issued piece. Similar proportions to the G10, we have a 35.8mm case diameter. We have a 42mm lug-to-lug measurement, a thickness of 9.8mm and a lug width of 19mm. Now, usually I'd be critical of brands using 19mm because it is an odd lug width, but however, 18 and 20mm are the contemporary industry standard, but however, in the 1960s and 1970s, for example, 19 was a popular lug width. The CWC G10, which this is an homage to, also had a 19mm lug width, and therefore this is a faithful homage to it. However, it does limit the strap options because 18 and 20 are now the popular sizes. The single pass fabric strap is like a single pass NATO, and it doesn't taper, it's straight and parallel, so 19mm at the lugs and also 19mm at the stainless steel buckle and tang. Matte sandblasted finish to the buckle and tang, nice heavy gauge to the 316L grade stainless steel, no sharp edges, no burrs, and it is very aesthetically pleasing. I'm not going to be critical of it being sterile and unsigned because this is an homage to the G10, and the NATO straps fitted to the G10 were also sterile. We have a boxed top hat crystal. Now, the thing to note is this is not made from sapphire crystal as one would expect. The boxed top hat crystal is actually made from K1 hardened glass, which is a compromise between sapphire crystal, which is more expensive and more hard and scratch resistant, and mineral crystal, which is less expensive and less hard and scratch resistant. K1 hardened glass really sits between the two, sapphire and mineral crystal respectively. They've made the correct decision here because one has to expect some cost-cutting measures at €39 to make this viable to retail at that price point. For example, they could have used acrylic crystal. The CWC G10, which this is an homage to, originally used acrylic. Now, acrylic does look very aesthetically pleasing. When you tilt an acrylic crystal piece at an oblique angle, you get the characteristic distortion and magnification effect, so it does look very good. But the negative of acrylic is it's very soft and therefore being prone to scuffs and scratches. Hardened K1 glass, of course, is harder than acrylic and therefore more scratch resistant. It is harder than mineral crystal, which they could have used as a cost-cutting measure. Of course, it's not as hard as sapphire crystal, so I think it is the correct choice. It's a good compromise, and €39 is a very low price point for this piece. Clarity is good of the K1 hardened glass. The dial layout is exactly the same as the CWC G10, which this is an homage to. Large white Arabic numerals contrast very well with a matte black dial. And also the rail track chaptering is also clearly indexed with minute ticks. So legibility is good. The quality of the printing of the C3 Super Luminova on the dial is very good. And also the quality of the printing of the rail track minute ticks is very good. Now, with regards to the dial, if you look at 12 o'clock, you can see there's a T in a circle, which, strictly speaking, should have an S in a circle because T in a circle denotes tritium used on the dial and hands. The CWC G10 did use tritium on the dial and hands, and therefore it had a T in a circle. This is subjective. I think it looks good because it does look exactly the same as the CWC G10, which this is an homage to. Some collectors would prefer if it had an S in a circle because it uses superluminova, not tritium. The other thing to note is if you look at the 6 o'clock position, you can see it has the broad arrow. Now, again, strictly speaking, it should not have a broad arrow on the dial because the broad arrow denotes that the watch is property of the British government. Broad arrow was used as a mark on military issued pieces which were issued by the British Ministry of Defence, and it denoted that it was property of the British government. But however, I'm not going to be critical of Rdunae using it because this is an homage to the G10, which did feature the broad arrow because it was military issued. The other thing is they're not the only brand to do it because, for example, Omega with the Seamaster No Time to Die version used in the James Bond film worn by Daniel Craig, that also has a broad arrow on the dial. And clearly the Omega No Time to Die Seamaster is not property of the British government. It's not a military issued piece. So they're not the only brand to use it. I think it's okay to use the broad arrow. This is an homage to the G10 which had it. Dial is clearly legible. Proportion of the handset is good. Often low-tier Chinese brands have a tendency to undersize and underproportion the hands, but if you look at the pencil minute hand, you can see the tip of the pencil hand extends all the way to the minute ticks on the white chaptering of the rail track chaptering, which is good. The hour hand, which is a sword profile to it, also extends all the way to the white Arabic numeral, so it's long enough and large. The contrasting white second hand is long enough to extend to the minute ticks on the rail track chaptering too. So proportion of the handset is good, legibility of the dial is good, and I like the matte finish of the dial rather than using a glossy enamel black dial. This does look very similar to a CWC G10 dial. With regards to the case, it's solid 316L grade stainless steel, matte sandblasted finish to it, which does give it a vintage military issued aesthetic. It does look very similar to the finishing used on the G10. Every facet of the case is sandblasted to a good standard, even in between the lugs. Nice crisp edges to the case, which mark the transition between the tops of the lugs and the flanks. No sharp edges to the tips of the lugs or the corners, and the undercuts to the flanks have been deburred and chamfered very well. The case does look very similar to a CWC G10, so they've got the proportions bang on. Now, one thing I dislike about it is the crown, because the coin edge crown is solid 316L grade stainless steel, but it is mirror polished. It's got a mirror polished domed cap to it, which is sterile. I'm not going to be critical of it being sterile, which I usually am, because this is an homage to the G10 that also had a sterile crown. But it would look better if it was matte, bead-blasted effect or sandblasted effect as per the case, rather than being mirror polished. Mirror polished crowns look good on daily wear pieces or dress pieces, but not on field watches. Strictly speaking, field watches should not have any reflective surfaces because they would reveal you to the target, reflecting the sun, for example. So, field watches always have a matte case. They're either brushed satin finished or alternatively sandblasted finished like this case, and also the crown should not be shiny and reflective. It should be a matte finish rather than a mirror polished finish to it, but this is subjective. Some collectors might like the mirror polished coin edge crown. So push-pull crown provides an effective hermetic seal to 50 metres. As this is a field watch, 50 metres is strong enough specification, and it doesn't need to have a screw down crown. It's not a dive piece. Field watches should have a push-pull crown. So let's test the push-pull crown execution. Now, this is powered by the Miyota 2035 quartz, which doesn't have a date complication. There's no date wheel beneath the dial, therefore there's no phantom date setting position. So it simply has one click on the crown. When you pull it out to the first click, it's the final click. And if you look at the second hand, you can see I have now hacked the movement. So it's possible to set the time precisely to the second with the caliber 2035. So we're now in the time setting position. Feels smooth, clockwise and anti-clockwise as you cycle through the 12 hours. Nice light resistance to the gearing, it's very low friction. One thing I really like about the 2035 is the lack of backplay. there's an almost immediate response. When you rotate the crown clockwise and anti-clockwise, you don't have to take up a lot of slack. There's less slack than a Seiko NH35A, for example, which you'll all be familiar with. You don't have to take up the slack. So when you rotate the crown, the minute hand almost immediately responds. There's minimal backplay. Feels nice and tight. So it does feel good to set the time. Feels nice and smooth, clockwise and anti-clockwise. And it's got medium resistance to the gearing. So it's a low friction movement. Feels very robust and reliable. Pushing it back in, it's got a nice positive click, and that restarts the movement. You can see the contrasting white second hand begins to tick around the rail track, chaptering once again. Feels very good. Hacking works good. Time setting works good. It's the correct choice of quartz caliber for this piece at €39. Right, so I'll show you the case back. Solid 316L grade stainless steel case back, which is also sandblasted finish to match the case. And they've done a very good job of sandblasting it, as you can see. The sandblasting finish looks exactly the same as the case. Good to see a screw down case back rather than a pressed on case back. Rdunae deserve credit here because they could have used the cost cutting measure of using a pressed on case back, and that would still have provided 50 meters. A screw down case back is stronger specification, it's better quality, and of course 50 meters is good enough for a field watch. They've engraved it with high definition engraving with a full specification and reference number of the piece. They've detailed its 50 meters, the movement used, the Miyota 2035, even the battery reference number, and this is actually useful information. They deserve credit because rather than having to remove the case back and look at the battery to see which reference number it uses, they've actually engraved the reference of the battery. So for example, when the battery is getting low in this piece, you don't need to remove the case back to look at the battery before ordering a new one. You can simply look at the case back, so that is actually very good. They've even included the spring bar length, 19mm, which details the 90mm lug width. So just the right amount of information, and it does give it a military issued aesthetic, and they haven't gone a step too far by engraving the broad arrow as per the dial, because of course this isn't a military issued piece, which isn't property of the British government, so it's good. I like it. The engraving doesn't feel rough or sharp, feels nice and smooth. The thing I like about the screw down case back is it's very low profile and flat, and that's the benefit of this being quartz powered rather than automatic powered. For example, if this was powered by the NH35A, it would be a lot thicker because it would need adequate clearance for the rotor. But you can see it's very flat. This piece is only 9.8mm, even though it uses a boxed top hat profile hardened K1 glass crystal. So case back is very well finished, engraving is good, doesn't feel sharp or rough. So I'll give you a wrist shot and you can see how it fits on my 8-inch wrist. Now this fabric strap is 19mm, it's NATO style, but strictly speaking it can't be called a NATO strap because it doesn't use stainless steel hardware. It doesn't have stainless steel NATO keepers, it just has a fabric keeper which is fixed, it doesn't slide. So it's a single pass fabric strap in the NATO style, but it's not actually a NATO strap. But the thing I like about it is it's a pleasant surprise. There's plenty of length. Even on my 8-inch wrist, I can slide an index finger beneath it. Plenty of holes in it, so this will fit from a 6-inch minimum size up to even a 9-inch wrist size. You can see on my 8-inch wrist I've still got plenty of length. Often with NATO style straps they're a fraction too short for my 8-inch wrist, but this one is long enough. So Rdunae deserve credit. They've made a strap long enough to fit 6 to even 9-inch wrists, so this is very good. Feels very comfortable. Nice weave to the fabric. The canvas weave is nylon and it's got a contrasting beige or khaki rib to the centre section. Nice ribbed profile to it, and it feels very soft and supple. Doesn't feel stiff, doesn't feel rough, and actually feels like a very comfortable strap. The khaki tone of the centre stripe complements the peach tone of the patina C3 Superluminova used on the hands and also the dial. So colour tone is good and I like it. Good length to it, feels comfortable. And because it's single pass rather than a double pass as per a NATO strap, this doesn't sit too tall on the wrist. It's only 9.8, and even with the strap passing beneath it, you can see it will easily slip underneath the shirt cuff, even though it uses a double dome boxed crystal. So very aesthetically pleasing, but lacks wrist presence. The proportions are exactly the same as the CWC G10, which this is an homage to. Clearly it's best suited to collectors with a smaller wrist of 6 to 7 inches. If you have a larger wrist of 7 to 8 inches, you may find that 35.8 does not give enough wrist presence to satisfy, but that is the proportion of the G10, which this is an homage to. 36mm was a popular size in the 1960s and 1970s, for example, and it does give the aesthetic of a military issue piece such as the G10. They were smaller cases in that period, but nice compact lug to lug measurement of only 42, wraps around the wrist very well, nice curved profile to the lugs. The shape of the G10 case is very aesthetically pleasing, I do like it. I also like the matte finish to the sandblasted case, it does give it that military issued aesthetic, this being a tool watch or a field watch. So needless to say, at 9.8 this will easily slip underneath a shirt cuff if you wear business shirts, because anything below 13mm is the sweet spot. It does feel very comfortable. The thing that most surprised me about this is it's incredibly lightweight. This is only 40 grams on the nylon fabric strap. Anything below 150 grams on a bracelet is comfortable. Anything below 100 grams on a strap is also comfortable to wear for long periods of time, such as 8 to 12 hours per day. So at only 40 grams, this really does feel like an invisible piece. It is a very comfortable piece to wear. Feel good factor is excellent, comfort level is excellent, and this fabric strap actually feels very soft and supple. It doesn't feel stiff, doesn't feel rough, the fabric feels soft, so immediately it feels comfortable, like a strap you've worn for years, and it doesn't require any breaking in. It doesn't feel like a stiff nylon fabric strap. Legibility of the dial is good, handset is also good, and I like the contrasting white second hand. The AR coating works very well on the underside of the K1 hardened glass crystal. Just a good looking piece, and feel good factor is great. So I like the proportions of it, and I like that it's very lax heft, it's only 40 grams, and it's just a very good looking homage to the CWC G10. Right, so just bear with me, I'll do back up the fabric strap and then we'll do a lume test. So this uses C3 Super Luminova, which has a patina tone. So as always, I'm going to use my 100 UV LED torch to charge it up to the absolute peak. Right, so that's now fully charged, and as you can see, it has not disappointed. Good quality C3 Super Luminova. So, in daylight conditions, there's a perfect colour tone match. The patina tone, which is peach tone, perfectly matches on the printed dial and also the handset. The hands are correctly proportioned. You can clearly differentiate between the longer pencil minute hand and the shorter sword hour hand. So hands are good proportions, and also I like the triangle at 12 o'clock on the dial because that can immediately orientate the dial. You can immediately tell where 12 o'clock is. Very good. So we're clearly looking at 3 to 4 layers of C3 Super Luminova versus 5 to 6, but it is performing very well. The exciter is glowing very brightly, both on the hands and also the dial, and they deserve credit here because they could have cut production costs further. This piece is only €39 in the low tier. One has to be realistic and expect some cost-cutting measures. So it is to be expected to see 3 to 4 layers of C3 versus 5 to 6, which adds production costs. At €39, this is good performance for C3 Super Luminova. It's a pleasant surprise. So, good symmetry to the dial because we've got the rectangular indices at 12, 9, 6 and 3. We've also got the triangle at 12, which is good, and then we've got the smaller dots on the indices for the other hours. So the symmetry of the dial is good with the absence of a date complication. The G10 dial is clearly legible in the dark, as you can see. So the exciter is continuing to glow for a good length of time. It's not fading very quickly, even though it's 3 to 4 layers versus 5 to 6. Good colour tone match between the hands and also the dial, and I like it. I think this is very good. It's impressive for €39. Rdunae deserve credit. Right, so let's discuss the movement use because it's one of my favourite aspects of the piece. So this uses the Miyota caliber 2035 quartz, which has a record for being the longest production run of all Miyota calibers. It has an incredibly long production run. It's been in service since 1981. It also holds another world record. There are now over 5 billion Miyota 2035 quartzes in circulation. Just think about that for a moment. Over 5 billion of these movements in circulation since 1981. So it holds the record for the longest production run ever of any Miyota caliber. It also holds the world record for the most produced movement in the world. 5 billion 2035s. Needless to say, it's a reliable, well-proven workhorse quartz movement. One of the most reliable, durable and robust Miyota calibers ever made since 1981. It has 0 joules, it has hacking which works well as I've demonstrated. 3-year battery life is very impressive. Often quartz movements only have a 1 or 2 year battery life, 3 years is very good. The stated accuracy is plus or minus 20 seconds per month. Now just think about that for a moment. That's not plus or minus 20 seconds per day or per week. Plus or minus 20 seconds per month is better than plus or minus 1 second per day. Incredible accuracy with a 3-year battery life. No negatives to it whatsoever. It's reliable, it's well proven, it's a good solid workhorse quartz movement made in Japan since 1981. Over 5 billion in circulation. It is proven beyond doubt. So, correct choice at this price point because of its reliability and also because of its accuracy. Plus or minus 20 seconds per month is incredible accuracy. No negatives to it whatsoever. The 3-year battery life is very good. The plus or minus 20 seconds per month is good. Hacking works well. Time setting works well. At €39, Rdunae have selected the correct choice in the Miyota Calibre 2035. It is one of my personal favourite Miyota quartz calibers. So, last I'll summarise the piece. What do I think of it overall? Well, when I'm considering reviewing a watch on my channel, it should meet 2 criteria. It should be both excellent quality and excellent value at the respective price point. So, low tier piece, price point is €39. Yes, this is unquestionably excellent quality, and yes, it is unquestionably excellent value at only €39. The C3 Superlume Nova performs very well. It's 3 to 4 layers, but at €39 it is good. The AR coating works well. Hardened K1 glass has excellent clarity, and it is better than mineral crystal, which would have been a cost-cutting measure. Screw down case back is very good rather than a pressed on case back, and the 50 meters of water resistant is perfectly acceptable. This is a very good homage to the CWC G10 at €39. The lume is good, the AR coating is good, and the movement is very accurate at plus or minus 20 seconds with a 3-year battery life. It's a great field watch, and I think Rdunae deserve credit. Quality control, build quality and finishing are all excellent. I'm going to declare it a champagne watch for lemonade money. I hope you've enjoyed my review of the Rdunae RA01T military field watch. Please feel free to post your own comments below the video. Thank you for watching.